Hi all, welcome to another lecture on the module 5 Android programming for the subject EC312 object oriented programming. So this is the third lecture on the Android programming module, and in this lecture we are going to look at another Android component which is called as broadcast receiver. So as we have discussed in the previous lecture, Android components are the essential building blocks of an Android app. There are 4 different types of app components: activities, broadcast receivers, services, and content providers. And this lecture we are going to look at broadcast receivers. Before going to the explanation of what a broadcast receiver is, let us consider a physical analogy of what the receiver is. So consider a radio broadcasting. So when the radio station wants to send a message to users, it will send it to the open space, which we call it as broadcasting. So broadcasting means that you send it openly, and any user who wants to receive the message can receive it and process it. So it is not intended to send to any particular user. For example, when you are sending a letter, it is not a broadcast because you are giving an address for the letter, and according to the address it will be received by that person only. It is not received by everybody. So the message that is being sent from the station can be of any type. It can be music, news, programs, interview, etc., etc. So we give different names for the message depending on what type it is. Now those who want to receive the message can listen to it by tuning the radio to the station. So there is a tuner in the radio. If you rotate it, it will change the frequency and it can listen to the frequency at which you are setting. Again, this can be done in 2 different ways. The first way is, let's say you want to tune into any particular program. So what you will do, you look up at the schedule of the radio station which will be published in any of the media. Then you see what is the time of that program, and then during that time you will tune the station for that program. And the next way is, you might be randomly changing the station just to search for any program of your interest, and then you might have encountered a program by chance which is of your taste, and you will start listening to it. So this is a physical or a normal social scenario in which you are listening to a radio station. The broadcast receiver is exactly the same. So in broadcast receiver in Android, basically is used to communicate between different Android apps and also with the apps and system. So there is an operating system. You need to communicate operating system with the other apps. There are different apps might be running on your Android OS. You need to communicate between these apps. So the broadcast receiver basically is intended for communication between different apps and the system. Now if any app want to send a message to other apps, a broadcast message will be sent. Means if one app need to send a message to, let's say, 3 or 4 apps, then it will send a message to everyone, and the messages are called as indents. So this message is called as an indent. Now if you consider an example, let's say your app, let's say it is a YouTube app. Now there's a share button in your YouTube app. You have a video, you need to share with many people. So when you click the share button, you see that the Android pops up different apps like WhatsApp, email, Facebook, etc., etc., where you can share the message. So basically what happened was, the YouTube app has broadcasted a message that the user need to share the app, and there will be many apps we can share it to different people, like whatever WhatsApp and email and Messenger, etc., Instagram, etc., etc. So these all apps can share the message, and you can use those apps to share the message. So that sharing message is broadcasted. Now, these messages have a special name in Android. This is called as indents. Indent, as a name, physical name indicates, it came from what the user indents while using the app. Let's say you are using WhatsApp. So your intention there is to send a message to any other particular user. Or let's say you are using Instagram. Your intent is to share your photo. Or let's say you are using a YouTube app. Your intent is to watch a video. So intents are basically the messages that is being passed between different apps. Now, once the message is sent, so whichever apps would like to listen to the message will register for it. So indents, when you send, is basically you are broadcasting the indent, and whichever apps would like to listen to it need to register for it. Basically, you are saying that you are going to tune your receiver to that message. So this is basically it is similar to radio tuning. And the registered apps receives the indents and process it. So some part of the Android operating system will let your registered app know that the indent is coming and you can process it. So let's dig deeper into it. So a broadcast receiver is implemented as a subclass of broadcast receiver class overriding the onReceive method, where each message is received as indent object parameter. So this is basically a structure of how the broadcast receiver is designed. So you have your receiver, which is extended from broadcast receiver. So this is your superclass and my receiver is your subclass, and you should define the function onReceive with parameters context and indent. So indent is the message here. Context might be your, for example, the app you have created, etc. So whenever a broadcast receiver is received, the onReceive function will be called. So now who calls this function? So that is a different question altogether. We'll see who calls the function. So, and who will send this indent. So we will see that this function is basically called by activity manager with the indent value and to which app, and then inside the onReceive function you can decide what you want to do with this message. But before all these things, the broadcast receiver need to register saying that I need to have, or whenever the message of for this indent comes, my app, onReceive function of my app should be called. So receivers can register their interest in certain indents via indent filters. So now we are going to look at how we are going to register the indent. So we are going to register for a particular indent, for a particular message. So for that message, I need to call the onReceive function, or I need to get the indication that okay, there is a message for you. So we are going to see how we can register that. So as I said earlier, all these messages or all these indents are serviced or directed by activity manager. So activity manager might be getting indent from different applications and above this layer, and you need to register to activity manager whether your application needs the message or this particular message or this particular indent. And the activity manager, once it receives that indent, it will broadcast to all the apps whichever has registered, and you can process the indent. So there are basically two ways to register an indent. So actually you can see that the activity manager is the center of everything. So whichever applications wants the indent or the message, you can register in activity manager, and you can register in two different ways, and activity manager will call the onReceive method, which is called as a hook method or a callback method whenever that indent occurs or whenever that indent has been passed from other apps. The first way of registering is using the Android Manifest.xml file. So we have discussed this earlier regarding Android Manifest file. So this is a single most important file in your app in your Android application, where you communicate the details of your application with the Android operating system and with other apps. So there is a receiver tag in Android Manifest.xml file. So there is a receiver tag. So inside this receiver tag, you will be defining an indent, or you will say an indent filter, which means whenever an indent of, let's say, hang up oncoming call or call back from your notification center, SMS from notification comes, then that indent is meant to this app, to this receiver. So registering in a manifest file will let the operating system know which broadcast messages need to be received and processed before running the application. So whatever messages are being sent, this indent filter, whatever message defined inside the indent filter is available to this application and will be able to call the onReceive method. So if you look at the physical part, so it is similar to a person looking up the program, the schedule, and tune into that program at that time. So the person knows beforehand the time of the program. Now the thing in Android Manifest XML file is, before running the code of Android, the operating system knows that this indent is for this particular receiver. That is, beforehand or statically, the operating system and the other apps knows about this indent to which application it is. So it is similar to this, where the user tries to user tune into the program knowing that, okay, this program is at this point of time. So basically your program is your message, the person you are tuning is basically your application or a system, and the schedule that you look is the Android XML file. So in Android Manifest.xml file, this is how you write the broadcast receiver block. You see that under the receiver tag, you have the indent filter. So the indent filter, whatever is defined inside the indent filter, so that indents will be used to call the onReceive function of this application. So when any other application broadcasts an action hang up ongoing call indent, then the activity manager will call the onReceive function of this application or of the broadcast receiver of this application with this indent. Similarly, when any other application or system sends or broadcast action callback from notification indent, the receiver onReceive function of this application will get called. Similarly for action send SMS from notification. So you can list n number of indents inside this. So depending on or whichever application broadcasts that indent, the activity manager will capture the indent. It will direct that indent to your application. And so how the activity manager will direct the indent? So it is directing the indent by calling the onReceive method of your application. So you should define an onReceive hook method or onReceive callback method in your application, so that the activity manager can call that function whenever any of this indent is generated from other applications. Now there is a second way of registering the indent. This is by explicitly calling this register receiver function. So the Android operating system will not be knowing which all components needs the indent beforehand. It will be known only during runtime. So this is actually a piece of code. So in your code, in your Java or Kotlin code, you will call register receiver only when it is needed. So for example, there is a phone application, and phone application might is an application where you will receive the call, or you will get you will send SMS, etc., etc. Now the phone application will register regarding this indent when this application is running, not beforehand, not like Android Manifest XML file. And so the operating system doesn't know whether you have registered the intent before running the application. So this is not only during the runtime. And the component which the application needs to know the broadcast of that particular intent. So if you look at the physical analogy part, you see that it is similar to that you are tuning your radio, and then you find the program which is of your taste, which you like, and then you start listening to it. So beforehand you doesn't know whether beforehand you don't know when the program is broadcasting or something like that, or whether you want to listen to any program. But when you tune in, you hear the program which of your interest. Now the person doesn't know about the program, person knows about the program only after program starts running. So just similar to that, only when the app starts running, then the operating system knows that okay, there is this application which has registered to activity manager for this particular indent. Now how will you register in the case of a dynamic registering? So what you want to do is basically you need to create an object of broadcast receiver, and then let's say you created an indent filter for action airplane mode as changed. Then you call a registered receiver with the receiver, the broadcast receiver object, and the indent filter. Now the action airplane mode change means that whenever a user changes the airplane mode, then whichever applications have registered for that message, the activity manager will call the on receive function of that application. So let's say the user has changed the airplane mode, a message or an indent from one of the services will be generated. It will be sent to activity manager receive. Now the phone application has called the register receiver already to the activity manager for getting the information regarding this airplane mode change indent. So the activity manager will call the on receive function. So here the activity manager will call the on receive function to deliver the indent to the receiver. So the on receive will have the indent, which is action airplane mode change. It will also have the context, which is the current application. So if a component has registered for any particular indent, then once that indent is generated, the on receive method of the broadcast receiver is called. So the on receive method will be called, and the activity manager service deals with the delivery of the indent to the broadcast receiver using on receive callback. So on receive function is the most important function of this broadcast receiver, which will be called whenever the indent for which the application has registered to the activity manager has occurred. So the indent or the message might have come from different other application or from the system. For example, battery low can be an indent. So in that case, any application who wants to know whether a battery has come down can register that indent in activity manager. So once the battery has come down below a threshold, then the message will be broadcasted by the corresponding application or the system. Activity manager will come to know about the message or the indent, and the activity manager will call the phone application using the phone application function, callback function on receive with this indent, and the broadcast receiver of the phone application can process what to do with that indent. So this is basically how the broadcast receiver works. These are some references from which I have taken the slide. Thank you.